Hey, I'm Dr. Mike Ronsisvalle. I'm going to help you crush the power of shame and guilt in your life forever. All right, welcome to Wellness Wednesday. That's a pretty big tagline, huh? You ready to crush the power of shame and guilt? It is incredibly destructive in our lives, and that part is clear. I don't think we knew even just a few years ago in my field how powerful, especially shame, can be in people's lives. So I was super excited when I was talking today with a couple folks about this topic because I know that it's relevant for probably every person listening. And the reason I know that is because it's relevant for almost every human alive. Like, we struggle with this. It's part of the human condition. And I'm excited to be able to just help you begin to think through, why is shame and guilt a part of our life, a part of our emotional makeup, and then what do we do about it? What's the solution to it? So some of you might be saying, hey, this isn't for me. I'm going to turn the video off because I don't deal with that. I don't have shame and guilt, and that's just not me. And let me ask you some questions. All right, just start to think some of this through. Number one, maybe you've done something or you didn't do something. Maybe you made a mistake, or you felt like you should have said something that you didn't say. And that thing that still makes your stomach drop. You know, that thing that you can say, man, this thing from my past, I don't even like thinking about it. I don't like thinking about what I did. I don't like thinking about how I hurt people. I don't like thinking about how I even made that choice. Why did I do that? And this could have happened a week ago. It could have happened 10 years ago. It could have happened decades ago. There are plenty of you that still in small, still moments, you lay your head on your pillow at night, you think about stuff that happened when you were 8 years old, 10 years old. And even though that might have been 40 years ago, you still, in some ways, you think, man, I don't know what to do with how weird I feel about some of these choices that I've made. And maybe it's a lie. I was deceptive. Maybe is a failure. And this is huge for some people, especially guys. Like, if you're a man and you're watching this, failure's tough. And you think about that first business that didn't go right, or that relationship that didn't work, or I cheated on my wife or my girlfriend, or those decisions that just make you want to crawl in a hole and like never, ever, ever have to talk about it or think about it again. That is shame. That is the power that shame has in our life. I'm illustrating the power that it continues to have for some of us decades later. And I think the important thing about shame is to recognize that it's not always something we did. That's tough because we like to feel like we're in control of our life and we control the outcomes. But sometimes we can have shame about something that happened to us. There are many of you that you can think back, man, when I was 8 years old or 10 years old, 15 years old or 20 years old, doesn't matter. Something happened, sexual abuse. Like, this person did this to me. You didn't have any say in the matter. You're a kid. But you're still stuck in that shame in the same way. And today, I want to talk to you about how to break the chains of the past. How do you break the chains of shame and guilt in your life? So let's create some definitions here. I think for us to have a real conversation about this, we have to begin to understand even what we're talking about. Brene Brown is one of the researchers in our field, in my field, that talks about shame kind of as much as anybody. I would say it's her thing, right? She had a YouTube video come out, I don't know, it's been a long time ago now, 10 or 15 years, and it was one of the most watched YouTube videos in history. It's maybe even top 10 still today. I think it's called The Power of Vulnerability. And this lady, she was researching happiness. She was trying to research like what makes people happy. And she got to a point in her research where her findings were so personally devastating to her. It ran so against like the way she was wired that I'm pretty sure she stopped her research for a while. She's like, I don't even look at this anymore because I don't like the way I feel when I even read my own research and read about what we're finding. She found that the path to happiness was really only gained through what she calls wholehearted living. You know, like that living where you can just be like, man, I'm all in, I'm fully in, I'm super connected to myself and my future, and I have nothing to prove. Like I don't have anything to kind of prove to anybody. I don't have a chip on my shoulder. I can fully engage and embrace these moments because I'm not dealing with all this junk from the past, right? All the shame and guilt. And she found that wholehearted living was so difficult for her personally that she didn't even want to look at it. And it was only after she spent some time dealing with herself that she was able to come full circle, go back, finish that research. And some of the stuff she's written has been really, it's changed our field in a lot of ways. So props to her for having the strength and the courage to lean into something that was uncomfortable. She makes a powerful distinction as she's talking about shame and guilt between those two emotions. So she would say guilt says I did something bad. I did this thing, I shouldn't have done it. It was bad. That's guilt. Shame is I'm bad. Like like I'm messed up. I'm not enough. One emotion is connected to a behavior. The other is connected really to your personhood. And so guilt is tied ultimately to behaviors, but it can be helpful, right? We're going to talk about that in just a minute because that's true. Guilt is an emotion that in some ways you want to address because it helps you look at potential blind spots, potential ways that you've hurt people and messed up, and you can respond to guilt because it's behavioral, right? Like, well, I can change my behavior. When you change your behavior, you begin to feel differently, right? You feel better. Shame is different. Shame is different because it attacks our identity. Shame is the very thing that whispers to you, I'm a failure. I'm messed up. I'm not enough. I don't belong. And shame doesn't motivate change, right? Guilt can motivate change. Like, I'm going to change this behavior about myself. I'm not going to be self-centered any longer. Shame, it disconnects us. It puts us in a position where we just want to hide, where we want to keep things secret. No one can know. No one should know. And as you can see, if you're going through your life and you just want to hide some things and I want to shield people from me, I don't want them to see me, that's not going to motivate behavior change. It's going to motivate withdrawal. It's going to motivate a deep, deep desire to just get away. So one distinction that I like to use to sort of talk about shame and guilt is another nomenclature, and it's true guilt versus false guilt. So what is true guilt? True guilt is, and I'm going to use some spiritual stuff on you here, so I hope that's okay, but I want to introduce this concept in the context of spirituality because I think it's so tied to that wholehearted living, to just that freedom of being able to just be yourself. True guilt says, I've done something, and this thing that I've done has caused real pain in my life or someone else's life. Like I've hurt someone or I've hurt myself. So an example would be, I talked bad about someone in front of a group of people, and it got back to them, and it hurt him. This is my friend. I shouldn't treat my friends like that. Like that's true guilt. It can be like I hurt myself. I'm doing something actively right here that hurts me right here, right now. I'm doing cocaine or heroin, or I'm gambling away all my money and I can't pay my rent. Like that's not something you've really done to anyone else. You're doing it to yourself. So true guilt is a response. It's a God-given emotion when we're doing these things that hurt us or hurt other people actively right here, right now. False guilt is this toxic emotion that basically you're in false guilt anytime you have the emotion of guilt and it's not in response to I'm hurting someone right here, right now. So anytime you feel guilty, the question you need to ask yourself is, well, is this an appropriate, healthy, true guilt? Like I'm actually doing something that's hurting me or someone else. And if your answer to that question is yes, awesome. Because now you know what to change. It motivates behavior change, right? I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to stop being that person. I'm going to stop being that guy. But if you answer that question, no, this is not about something right here, right now that I'm doing that's hurting someone. That emotion is false guilt. And we need to reject it out of hand. That is not a healthy, God-given emotion. Does that make sense? So there's a spiritual principle. Especially if you are a Christian and you believe in a God that's bigger than us, like the principle that Christians believe is God is love, right? Like God loves us. He created us. We're fearfully and wonderfully made, right? Somewhere in the scripture, it talks about like you're the handiwork of God, created to do good things. Like that is, there's a purpose and a plan for your life. And that same God does not love you because you're good enough or because you do everything right or because you're smart enough. That God loves you because you're valuable, simply because you're created in his image, period. That's it. So if that's the foundation that you're working from, then you can see why true guilt would be a God-given emotion, right? It's something that allows you to say, I need to turn from these things because I trust, God's laid some things out in front of me and I'm going to do the right thing, not because I've got to prove that I'm worthwhile, because I am worthwhile. Not because I've got to prove that I'm enough, because I am enough. I'm created in his image. I got to do the right things because I want to live a life that's healthy. And I don't want to go around hurting myself or other people. So I soak in true guilt. I just embrace it. But false guilt would be like anytime I feel that emotion of guilt that's not in response to right here, right now, I don't have anything to prove. I don't need to prove to God or to anyone else that I'm enough because I know I'm enough. Like that part is certain. So you can see the overlap here. Is it true guilt, false guilt, guilt, and shame? It's all just different words to describe this process where we're either responding to our life and to our decisions as adults and allowing ourselves to say when we've made mistakes and we've hurt ourselves or hurt someone else, and we can address that, we can use that emotion as motivation to change, versus I'm a messed up piece of crap who's less than and not enough, and I'm a fraud. Because that's not attached to a behavior, that's attached to you as a human. And it runs an absolute contradiction to the reality of how you've been created and the truth of who you are and the truth of your value as a human. All right. True guilt, false guilt, shame, guilt. All these things just point to the toxicity of the experience of false guilt or shame. Okay, so I want to tell you a story that illustrates the power of shame. And you've probably heard something like this before. I call it the suitcase of shame. So pretend there's a young woman, and from childhood, this lady's been carrying this suitcase around, right? Everywhere she goes, she's got this baggage. Everywhere she's got always these, it's emotional baggage, right? And it says, I don't know who packed this suitcase. I don't know who packed my bags for me. I don't know where all these messages came from, but I know that it's in my past, and that's the truth with shame, right? Shame is really going to be oriented towards some things that you've been through historically with people, usually. And it might be your parents, and it might be kids from school, and it might be, the church you went to, the youth group you went to. Maybe it's media. It could be culture. Just could be this crazy world we're living in. But this lady carried this suitcase. She carried this baggage everywhere she went. And inside the suitcase were all these labels. And the labels were, things like, I'm too emotional, I'm not smart enough, I'm too loud, I'm too quiet, I'm not pretty enough, I care too much about the way I look, I'm lazy, I'm a disappointment, I'm just a piece of crap. Right? Those labels were there. And every time she made a mistake, and every time she failed to meet someone's expectations, she reached into that suitcase and she found a label that she would wear, she'd attach to, that confirmed her deepest fears. And her deepest fears were, I'm just unworthy. I'm not enough. And the worst part of this story is no one could see the suitcase. No one knew she was carrying all that around. No one knew that she had these labels, that she, all this baggage that labeled her messed up and broken. All they saw were, the outward signs, right? Her smile, her people pleasing, her success, her performance, her ability to kind of be all things to all. That's what they saw. They did not recognize that she dealt with this constant pressure to always do it right in response to any mistake or any situation, that she was wearing these labels. And every night she'd open that suitcase and she'd look at those labels and she'd read them off over and over and over again. And some of you do the same thing. You lay your head on your pillow at night and you go over and over and over again all the labels. Too emotional. I'm not emotional enough. Not smart enough. I come across too pompous. I'm too loud. I'm too quiet. I'm not pretty enough. I'm lazy. I'm a disappointment. You know, right? And you go over it. And you just ruminate. And you think. And you get stuck on the thoughts. And it wasn't until years later that she's sitting across from someone at a table, and that person finally asks, what are you carrying around? And then she realized that the suitcase, all the labels, wasn't even hers to begin with. Some of the labels were lies. Some of the things were kind of based on other people's issues that they played out with her as a young kid or an adult. Others were wounds that she had never healed, like stuff that she had done that she had never just allowed herself to forgive herself for. And this lady began to unpack her baggage, unpack her suitcase, label by label. She engaged truth. She allowed herself to be vulnerable. She allowed herself to forgive other people, to forgive herself. And guys, that what I just described metaphorically is the process of therapy, right? It's the process of allowing yourself to kind of look at all the labels Try to figure out where they came from, and then evaluate once and for all, am I basing my life on these lies? Have I given shame this sense that at the end of the day that I'm just not enough? Am I giving it all the power to dictate my emotion, my posture in relationships, my understanding and ideas about myself? And so that, think about carrying around a suitcase all the time like this lady, and then put that in the context of your own life. What's your baggage? What are you carrying around? And my hunch is, if you're a human, that you still have some things that you've never addressed, and that shame that's down there. And I want to tell you that if you don't let yourself get in a therapeutic process or in a healthy environment, or, get on the Live Well coaching platform and just start educating yourself and getting information in, if you don't let yourself do that, there's a cost to shame. There's a cost to all those labels and those negative messages. And Brene Brown, this researcher I was telling you about, she calls the shame the swampland of the soul. The swampland of the soul. What a crazy good metaphor. It's sticky, it's murky, it's painful. And you know what? The scariest thing is that the shame thrives in silence, and it convinces us that if people really knew us, if we really let them see us, our past struggles, the mistakes we've made, the thoughts we have, if they really knew us, it's a matter of time until they reject us and they walk away. If you tell yourself that's not part of your experience, you're fooling yourself. That's part of the human condition. And shame is linked to any significant mental health situation you don't want to deal with. Trust me, shame is what drives addiction. Shame is what drives perfectionism. Shame is what drives depression and anxiety. Shame is what drives aggression. Shame is ultimately the core component of low self-esteem, like that part of you that just questions you. And guys, so many of us live in this. So many people have never unpacked their baggage. They've never looked at the labels. They just kept them as hidden as they possibly could. And I'll just keep working. I'll just perform well. I'll get a new job. I'll feel better when I get a new relationship. I'll feel better when my kids, treat me differently. None of it works. None of it works because you're trying to change behaviors or relationships when ultimately you've got to change the shame that's in here. It's in you. The problem's not out there. It's in you. So you've got the cost of shame, which is ultimately misery. It keeps us from what Brene Brown calls wholehearted living, happiness. But it also induces all this mental health stuff that we can deal with. And there's some very real neuroscience to it as well. And just for a minute, we're going to pause and look at the connection of shame neurologically, because I think it's so wild. If you look at the research on this, and it's going to sound very familiar if you ever watch Wellness Wednesday. So shame isn't just emotional, it's physiological. When someone is shamed, especially if it's chronic shame, especially if it's childhood, and that's been proven in the research. That's not just me trying to pin everything on, I had a bad childhood. That's actually data driven. When someone is shamed, the brain interprets that experience as a threat to survival. Now, what do we know about when we interpret an experience as threatening? And you know this, right? If you've ever think about moments when you felt really shamed. It is not a breezy experience. You feel like, man, it's the end of the world. You feel at risk. Why? Because your frontal lobe is shut down, because your amygdala has turned on. We've talked about this before, right? You get in fight or flight mode. Functional MRIs have shown that the shame activates the same areas in the brain as physical pain. Think about that. Think about a time when you could look back and say, oh my gosh, man, like we were talking about earlier, this thing that I did or this thing that happened to me, it activates the same areas of the brain as physical pain. So it's very clear for us physiologically, neurologically, that the brain processes shame just like it does an injury. Prolonged exposure to shame can dysregulate the prefrontal cortex. And what is the prefrontal cortex? That's the frontal lobe, right? It's the part of the brain that is responsible for judgment, reasoning, if-then contingencies. If I do this now, this happens later. It's where hope lives. It's where creativity lives. It's where problem solving lives. It's the part of the brain that makes you human. It literally shuts it down. Now, how crazy is that? And we think that this isn't that big of a deal. What I went through is not that big of a deal. I have people tell me that all the time in therapy. I don't even know why I'm here. I shouldn't be here. People have been through so much. What I've been through is no comparison to, fill in the blank, whatever they think is actually worth getting help for. But when you look at the data on this, regular, everyday situations where you feel that sense of shame shuts your frontal lobe down and activates the fear threat mode of the brain. All right. If you look at it from that perspective, you can see why shame is paralyzing. Right? It's not just in your head. It's not just you being a pansy. It's not just you being a whiner. Look, Mike, I don't want to talk about what happened when I was 12. That doesn't matter. I'm 40 years old now. I know you don't want to talk about it. That's what we said earlier. You want to hide this. I don't want people to see it. The truth is, it's not just in your head. It's not that you're overblowing this. It's not that you should just be able to get over it. It's literally in your nervous system. You're hardwired to respond to shame exactly as you are. That's why it feels like you're dying when you think about some of the things you've been through in the past. All right. What's the anecdote? Like, what do we do about this? What's the way out of shame? Brené Brown's really powerful, guys. Her writings on this are awesome because she says the answer to shame, which is ultimately, from her research, the path to happiness, is based in vulnerability. Not vulnerability in the sense of I'm weak or I'm at risk. Vulnerability in the sense of I'm just going to allow myself to be open. I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm not going to hide my choices. I'm not going to hide the things I've done. I'm not going to hide what's happened to me. If you're a Christian, read the Bible. It talks a lot about repentance, confession. Why do I have to tell anybody? It's nobody's business. 1,000%. I agree. You don't need to go on Facebook tonight and just talk about all the things that have happened to you. At 10, I was sexually abused. At 12, I lost my virginity. At 15, don't do that. That's not, boundaries are good. They're really good, right? But you do need to find the safe people that you can allow yourself to just say, okay, I can stop hiding. I have people in my life that I can just be real with and open up my heart to and not be defensive with. And just say, you know what? I messed up and I'm struggling and here's where I need some help and here's where I'm scared and here's the things that kind of freak me out. And ultimately, the more you let yourself be vulnerable in that way, just like I'm an open book, I've got nothing to prove, this is just me, warts and all, take it or leave it, the healthier you get. And the more you begin to just root out that shame. Because the shame is thriving because you're trying to hide. The vulnerability thrives when you shine light on dark places. So when someone says, man, I've been through this, or I've been through that, and this has happened to me, and man, I'm struggling with this, and it allows them to feel real to other people. And there's a lot of you that are lonely. The more shame you live in, the more lonely you are. The more you've got to present this perfect person to the world, the more you've got to just kind of pretend and focus on your performance and win every time. And the more desperate you really are. And the only answer is to be able to say, you know what? I'm done. I'm done trying to feel like I've got to say it right or do it right, or I'm just going to allow myself to focus on my values. Here's what's important to me. Here's my calling in life. Here's my integrity and character. I'm just going to do some things that are consistent with who I am at that core level, and the outcomes are going to be what they are. And if people like me, great. If they don't, that's great too. And if they like, choices I made when I was 20, that's great. If they don't, that's okay too. That comfort level with yourself, which again is based on what your status as like this created being, like you have value, not because of your ability to do it all perfectly. You have value because you're creating the image of God. You got nothing to prove. And so you go back to that suitcase metaphor. You got to start asking yourself, what are the labels that I'm carrying? Remember when I described the therapeutic process earlier? What's going on inside of my head? What am I hiding from everybody? What do I tell myself when things don't go right? What do I tell myself when I mess up? Or am I pulling out of all that baggage from the past? Like, I'm messed up, I'm lazy, I'm unmotivated, I'm not enough. And then you've got to allow yourself to say, where did I get these messages? And I'll guarantee you, most of the time, those messages were birthed, formulated, and conceived by other people. Other people that were messed up, broken, dealing with their own stuff, right? And once you allow yourself to just unpack everything and be honest and shine light on dark places, those are the moments that you're going to start to walk out of shame. Those are the moments when you're just starting to get real and be vulnerable. And there's something about that makes you strong. It feels weak. If you're a guy and you're watching this, it feels weak. It feels like, I don't want to talk about this stuff, and it's not necessary, and it makes me, whatever, fill in the blank. I'm telling you, the strength that you have when you let yourself just be open and honest and real, and like you don't have anything to prove, it literally attracts people to you. And so my encouragement to you today is make the decision that you're going to address shame. Make the decision today. You're not going to let your past define your present and your future. And if you can do that, man, you'll start to see the power of vulnerability, healthy vulnerability in your life. My last bit of encouragement is don't do this on your own, man. Don't do this on your own. If what I talked about today triggered you in any way, and you could say, Mike, there's some things that I've got all this baggage, this suitcase I carried around all the time, and it's got all the labels, and I tell myself, especially when things don't go well, especially when I fail it, if that's you, don't do this on your own. You need someone to walk through this process with you, right? So we've got therapists coming out of our ears at LiveWell. We've got 39 clinicians ready to help you. We've got coaches on the coaching platform that know how to do this. Most of them are therapists, by the way, and they'll just help you begin to kind of unpack some things. They'll point you towards resources on our digital platform, on really all over, that you can get inspired and you can learn how to cope with some of this stuff, and you can learn how to live wholeheartedly and engage vulnerability. So that's the most important thing I want to tell you at the end of this is don't take this journey alone. Find someone to walk with you. If you're there, just fill out one of the forms. Go to Live Well Coaching and fill out the form for a coach. It obligates you to do nothing, but you'll just give us a little form, tell us a little bit about what's going on. Someone from the Live Well will call you, and they'll talk to you about a coach. What's the worst that happens, right? My hope is going forward, you're going to be able to just take the steps necessary to once and for all bury the power of shame and toxic false guilt in your life forever. All right, guys. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. Like I said, don't hesitate to reach out to someone if you want some help, if you just want some ideas about what we've got available to help people move forward with some of this. Happy to do that. So livewell-coaching.com is the website.